Conflict is going to happen whether you like it or not. Whether that's with a partner or a friend or a sibling, anybody that you have any kind of an interpersonal relationship with, you'll have a conflict with them eventually at some point. What is important after the conflict, or even during, is how we come to a resolution. What are we fighting about? Why are we fighting about this? And what kind of a compromise can we come to have a greater understanding of the other person and their perspectives? Before we can get into what makes conflict beneficial or even fighting beneficial, we have to really understand what conflict is. It's defined as a struggle between at least two interdependent parties who perceive incompatible goals, scarce resources, and interference from another party as a hindrance to them achieving their goals. On paper, this sounds like it should be happening on a battlefield between two knights, right? But within communication studies, it's natural and beneficial for parties to come to an understanding of different perspectives and why there was even a conflict in the first place. Let's take a look at what some of the elements that go into conflict are. So, for example, I mentioned interdependence earlier, and I didn't know what that meant, so let me explain it to you real quick. Interdependence is the degree at which people interact with each other. So, are they in competition with each other or are they cooperating? Someone who is just independent by themselves has no stakes in the conflict, so there isn't one to be had. So you have to have some kind of interdependent relationship with the other person to be even having a conflict in the first place. Another foundation for conflict is perceived incompatible goals. And these goals can be the same or they can be different. And if they're the same goals, maybe there's just a miscommunication of where they're aligning. And there needs to be a conversation, or maybe even in this case, a conflict about where those communication breakdowns are happening. Something else I mentioned is also a lack of resources. And this could be a lack of time, a lack of money, or a lack of energy. It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical resource, which it could be, but doesn't necessarily have to be. There is one more element of conflict, and that would be interference. Interference is when there is any kind of external source that is inhibiting a proper conversation within the two parties. So it's emotions, it's outside noise, it's anything that interferes with a proper conversation happening between the two people. So a good example would be a sense of stubbornness. So, what are some ways to resolve these conflicts? What is conflict resolution? Well, it is pretty self explanatory, resolving whatever conflict it is. So, for example, one of them is different perspectives. You can look at the conflict from a different perspective from the other person so that you can gain a better understanding of where they're coming from when it comes to their side of the story, where why they believe this to be the way it is. And also, asking questions and making the other person feel heard and understood is then going to help your side be heard and understood as well. You don't really want to listen to somebody who's just talking at you, they want to understand where you're coming from as well. Conflict resolution strategy is to keep your needs in mind and try not to make it a competition. It's not you against them, it's trying to come to a common understanding of where the other person is coming from and why this conflict is starting in the first place. Try not to get sidetracked because that just leads to ineffective communication about things that are not relevant to the conversation. Most important conflict resolution strategy, though, is to compromise. Again, it's not a competition. It's not you versus them. It's not I have to be right and you have to be wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong and I'm going to be um, permissive. It is about finding a way that works for you both. And sometimes, in my own experience, I have to take a step back because do emotions, as mentioned in another module, are going to be a part of some conflicts. So for me, when it gets to that point, I have a word that I say when I'm feeling stressed or I'm feeling overwhelmed by the conversation. I need to take a break and I'm going to come back so that we can have a more productive conversation instead of having a I need to be right and you need to be wrong. Conflict resolution strategy that was mentioned in corporate and professional conflict resolution strategies that I thought was also effective to mention here was to find common ground and really emphasize it. Find something that you both agree on and just focus on that. Overall, conflict resolution strategies that are effective and utilize good communication can lead to a productive and meaningful conversation with someone that you do have a close relationship with. It can lead you to understand their perspectives more, and it can help you further illustrate your own listening skills that you really do care about them when you listen to what they have to say, even if it is a heated conversation. Conflict resolution strategies are going to be effective for everybody in everyone's everyday life, professional or interpersonal.